Hey, welcome everybody to a new episode of AK Indie Gaming Podcast. So this show is about with your co-hosts, myself, Michael Coolman, and Stephen Andreu. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Hello, hi.
So the point of this show really is we both like indie games, we like analyzing them, we like talking about them, and we want to sort of provide value to anyone watching who's interested. We come out with this show with a lot of recommendations, a lot of stuff that if you're interested in the topics we're talking about, Steven here has played tons and tons of indie games. I have played less amount, but I still like talking with him about what we like about them and where
You enjoy them.
I love indie
You're a
gaming.
fan.
I'm a fan for sure,
Yeah.
and so that's what we hope to talk about with this show. You can go back in the past episodes. We're pretty consistent with we kind of choose a game or a mechanic, and we talk about those. What makes them good or what makes them stand out from other video games and what we like about them because this is our hobby and we just want to talk about it. So this week, Steven, on your live stream, what kind of stuff have you played or been up to when it comes to indie gaming?
So within the past couple streams, we played Untitled Game, which was pretty fun.
Okay.
That was a good time. A lot of honking going on for sure. A lot of goosing, you might imagine. Not very much titling. We played. I did have my fancy birthday stream this week.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah.
The stream itself went exceptionally well, and we didn't really. It was I don't even know if I can call it an indie game, but we played Scribblenauts Unlimited.
What was it again?
It's Scribblenauts. I don't know if you've ever heard about this game. It's like a 2D puzzle game, I guess technically, where like the game will give you a problem that you have to solve. You'll talk to people, and the easy example is some lady's like, my cat's stuck in a tree, and then you literally have a notebook where anything you type into the notebook will just like appear, and it'll have properties of whatever object you want. Now this game's like old as fuck. I don't even know. It came out in like 2010 maybe. It's super old. It came out on the DS first. I obviously have it for PC, but it's like actually mind-blowing how many objects you have access to and how much they function. Like you could type in, and it's just a notepad. You just type in what you want. You could type in like Medusa. Medusa just shows up. And then if Medusa looks at something, it turns into stone. And if Medusa looks into a mirror, she turns into stone. And if you pick up Medusa's head and aim it at something, they turn into stone. And you have adjectives, tiny and huge and flaming and moist and all that shit. We played that for a couple hours, and that was just so many clippable moments from that game. From a woman who's like, I left the organ I need for a transplant somewhere. Can you get me a new organ? And I typed fake lung, and she took it immediately. And I was like, that's not good for that patient. They're gonna have a bad time. There was a gorilla that was like, the gorilla needs something to wear, and his name was like Kong or something. So you're like, King, you give him a crown, but I gave him a child, and then I gave myself a sniper, and you could just figure that out. See, history repeats itself.
So I know that Corey was clipping a bunch of stuff on your channel. Like, can people find those clips on your Twitch?
Yeah, they're on my Twitch account, and the next video I'm going to be putting up on my YouTube is going to be like a sort of a highlight little montage of the best moments of that stream, because there were just so many great moments that came from Scribblenauts, because that game is just so absurd. But yeah, we played a lot of that, and then somehow I've fallen into playing just a bunch of puzzle / escape room type games, which is going to be probably the primary focus of today. The second stream that I did when I started streaming again was for a game called The Escaper, which I actually like. First of all, I recommend this game wholeheartedly. Full 5-star review on this game. It's not like perfect, but it's $3. And for $3, it's 4 fully built, totally like very intricately designed escape rooms of varying quality, but
this is called
amazing.
The Escaper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's really fun, but back then I don't have a huge audience, but there were even fewer people. So I played that one mostly with like me and like two other people in chat, which is good. It was still a super fun game, and it's really fun to play puzzle games with chat. Um, and that game was a lot of fun. And so I've just been interested in looking for more escape room type game. So I was on Twitter one day. This was now like 3 weeks ago, maybe. But I was on Twitter and someone was talking about a game they were working on called the Mad Experiments Escape Room, which is another smaller indie escape room project. And I just sort of passingly commented like, man, like I'm actually really excited for this to come out because I can't wait to play another escape room game on stream.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about the Mad Experiments Escape Room is that it's a multiplayer, obviously but it's a multiplayer escape room game. So you, and I think it's up to 6 people total, can play through the room together, which most escape room games do not have that function.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented that, and the developer replied with, check your inbox, and he gave me 3 codes for the game, 1 for myself and 2 to give away to 2 lucky friendos to play the escape room with. And one of them was you, and then we played it.
Yeah.
Which, whoa, it was like last weekend.
Yeah, it was last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Last
a
Saturday.
fun experience. It's still in beta, right? It's not...
it's in early access, and there's one room that's still not released for it. Right now they only have the first room. There's going to be 2, and he's talked about maybe adding more, but right now we know there's 1 more.
And sort of jumping ahead a little bit, because we will talk about our experience with that, but that led you on. You went and got the room, and then you.
I got the room, which is another kind of an older. I think it came out in like 2014. An older puzzle game. So the room is kind of interesting because the room 1 is more of like a puzzle box type game, where like you just get like a single table or a single sort of contraption, and you just look around it and, you know, tinker with the different pieces and get codes and decipher stuff. And then the room 2 expands it to an entire room. So you have to look around the entire environment and go to different, you know, this table, pick something up, go to that table. Those are not like first person full motion the same way the Mad Experiments are, or the Mad Experiment Escape Room is. The room is more of a point and click kind of situation.
Do you think it's based...
They were in mobile.
Do you think it's based off of the Flash game, The Room? Or Escape the Room?
I don't know about the... Maybe it's from that. I know that The Room itself was a mobile game. I don't know which one came out first, but one of them is a port of the
So I played a Flash game that was like number 1 on the puzzle games or whatever in E-Bomb's World or Newgrounds. Sure. And this was like mid 2000s, like might have been 2005, 2004, right? And it was a Flash game that was a point and click, and it was first person perspective. But if you clicked on the side of the screen, it would like change your perspective, and so you had four different views of the room, and you had to take something underneath, like you kind of just spamming clicking everywhere to see what you can do, and then you find clues. Like that, and unlock, and then it was really eerie, really mysterious. Like you wake up and the screen fades from black to like the room comes in, and like you wake up with blood and you're not sure what happened, and it really captured, because it was such a small scale. Like Flash games are mostly like if anyone knows Bloons Tower Defense, that started off as Flash games. Now they're like games that you can buy, and they're popular mobile games. But it, regardless of the intricacies of it, like you can create a theme of gotta escape the room, and that mystery drives, if you're reading a mystery novel, drives you to, I gotta get to the last page. You're just turning pages, just like consuming it, just trying to get to the end of the mystery. That's the appeal of these escape rooms, and it was early on in 2004, and they've just updated it since then. And you now see in popular, like around the Florida area, a lot of tourists, they do escape rooms. Now, you and I were talking before the show. I've never done a real life escape room, and you haven't either, but we've got friends and stuff that tell us about it. And you know, it's like an hour long. Can you beat the timer? You have to use clues. You have to figure out little puzzles. You have to work with other random strangers, other groups and parties, like and like they'll handcuff you, and you have to like find the the key and unlock, and then we can only let 3 people into this next section of the room. They have to talk through, all this crazy stuff. So yeah, I think I don't really have a point from saying all that, but that's just sort of some context and background on how we got
Sure.
to an indie game version of the room. And um, let me ask you this then: the games, because I know we played our game together, and
Hmm.
it had some elements of the mystery of like what's going to happen, what's the story behind here. But did the room and the next series, the room 2 and 3 and 4, whatever you've played, did they what was the theme or the mood or what
The
makes it
first
fun?
one, the first one is like, well, for me, I just have sort of like an innate fascination with like contraptions and that sort of puzzle solving aspect of pattern recognition and looking around for missing pieces and where they can fit in. I just like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think the room definitely hits that pretty well. Um, the first game again is sort of pretty muted in terms of like its story. There's notes scattered around that sort of give hints at what's going on or some kind of big thing that's going on. And towards the end of the first game, they kind of open it up for a big story, and there's some eldritch stuff going on and some creepy magic, you know, nonsense. The room 2 ended with like a house exploding and like a fucking tentacle monster, so it's definitely I don't know. I'm gonna play the room 3 for the first time today
Okay.
on stream. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure there's a room VR, but I don't know if
That would
that's
be
a
cool.
sequel or a port of the first one.
And you don't
But
have to
they're
have
good.
uh, complex mechanics. You don't have to have this crazy artwork. You just have to have like a vibe and a puzzle and a way to drive the player forward. And
Yeah.
if it there's obviously the satisfaction of figuring out a puzzle, and a lot of these are like critical thinking, because as
Mhm.
gamers, like we have figured out the animation that you have to go to click on that thing to activate the next step. Then you have to like do this quest and go out and kill 10 chickens before you bring back the all this like stuff. That this is critical thinking. This is outside the box. This is you get surprised by the mechanics. Like you have to rely on like we had to do math on the with the mad experiment escape room. You,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some Morse code and
um,
some puzzle. I had to take out the pen and paper.
yeah, we had to take out pen and paper. I was recording stuff down. We were
You hate
trying
to
to
see it.
yeah, yeah, you have to memorize things. Like you have to go to this section, memorize something or write it down, and then
Yeah.
take it to the other section and apply it. And it's hard to brute force your way through, but
Right.
it's also
Definitely
doable.
some of the sort of more maybe the more frustrating parts for a lot of people, but the more difficult aspects of games like that is like a lot of the times you're given, it's pretty normal whether it's just a normal kind of puzzle game or some kind of like escape room game, you're given like a lot of information at first. There's a big information overload, and part of like the early process of playing any of these games is just sort of like absorbing everything you have. Like, what in here is something I need to remember, what in here is literally nothing. um Obviously with a video game, that sort of makes it it's a little bit easier because you have interaction. When I click on something, does it do something?
Mhm.
Yes or no? If it does something, then I at least need to like put it in my fucking memory bank. If it looks really conspicuous, I should also remember that probably. um but then usually like those games sort of branch out and then kind of converge at some point. When you hit those moments where there's only like one way to go forward and you really can't figure out what that is, I think that's where a lot of frustration comes with
Yeah.
these kinds of games, which is pretty normal. Sort of like a flow chart of what people should be figuring out in what order. Um, Mostly because it's like one solution will give you the part to a new solution. You sort of branch off from there. So it can be tough making a game like this that actually feels truly satisfying without just like roadblocking the player and then making them feel like they're only doing one thing at a time over and over and
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 different puzzles that you got to figure out at any given moment, and you
over. Hmm.
you you don't know if these 3 branches I can't progress any farther. Maybe I should go down the 4th branch, and that'll unlock something that I can take to branch number 2, and now we're getting progress throughout the game.
Yeah.
There's very rarely just one linear path.
Right.
Yeah, and something. Let's talk about the Mad Experiments game that we played. That was they had an option for a timer, and it was going to be for 1 hour, and we almost did it, and let's not, like, because I was thinking, like, I voted let's no timer or whatever, let's just try to figure this puzzle out, because if we have like a time limit on it, what if we don't do it and we don't see the rest of the content of the game? And so
Right.
yeah, I mean,
you'd either have to do everything over, or
yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't
you don't
know
get to see it.
I didn't know if it was going to kick us out at 60 minutes exactly, but I mean we turned the timer off, we beat the room, we beat the game as much as we could in the early access, and we did it in like 81 minutes, so we wouldn't have hit that timer, but
We would not have completed
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult because I feel like to some extent the timer is part of it. Like the panic
Yeah.
of not succeeding is definitely part of the experience. But for what it's worth, actually just getting to play the game is worth it. And I mean, we had the non-real timer. We had someone keeping track of the time.
yes,
So we failed, but you fail once, and then if you'd run the game back again,
Yeah.
you'd just do everything you did in 40 minutes in 10 minutes because you know how to do everything.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you have a huge gap of time to figure out the rest. You'll figure it out.
And so why did we, because we liked that game, I think overall the consensus was that was like a fun experience, and it caused you
Yeah,
to
I think
play
it was
other
fun.
games like it. Yeah.
I think it was a good time.
Yeah.
There's definitely some, I don't want to say criticism. There's some things that I think work better than others in the Mad Experiments specifically. And the game's not totally done. Like there's still things that can be changed or adjusted in it. And I think overall it is a fun experience, and I think the multiplayer aspect is definitely a big part of that. But I think one of the things that a lot of these like puzzle room type game really nail for the most part is giving players information that's valuable in some sense. So like
Okay.
the Escaper, to go back to it, and I don't want to turn
Yeah.
it into like is one better than, but I think the Escaper is actually, like, for me personally, the first room of the Escaper not only validates the entire purchase, again $3, king size Snickers, but it is like maybe like a benchmark for like digital escape room.
Okay.
Which is a big claim to make, but I'm gonna make it. I don't give a shit. Every single component of that room is valuable in some way, from a date that a picture has in the corner to there's a photo of a ballerina like hitting like a pose or whatever, on her tippy toes with her arms up, and you have to reference that picture to see where to put tiles on like a square grid somewhere else to see like where her arms are pointing, where her feet are pointing. There is basically nothing in that entire room that does not go unused. And because of that, every time you get new information, it's not like maybe it goes to one specific thing. You have no idea where it's branching, because every little thing feeds into that puzzle.
Mhm.
The Mad Experiments has obviously some element, but there are red herrings, and there's a lot of red herring.
Okay.
And I think it's okay to kind of give players a little more information than they need, so that they don't have, like we were talking about earlier, like the easy mode of being like, oh well, when I get something I can interact with, I use it. So where do I use it? Well, it's like, you have 5 locks, but you have 10 keys. You're not just gonna figure it out, just sort of easily. Like you have to figure out what's contextually important, what you need to learn, what you need to use. But I think it has a little bit too much of that. There are a lot of books that you can read that don't really amount to anything.
Yeah.
There's like a gun and like a car that you can pick up that aren't used for anything either. There's like a device underground that has like a sheet over it that you never end up touching.
Do you think that these things are, I don't want to, we're not trying to criticize and say bad game design or good game design. So this is more nuanced than just good bad. I mean, we're having an analysis
Right.
here. But do you think that is bad game design, and it should be more that everything, to the point that you're saying, everything shouldn't, maybe have one or two red herrings, but don't have so many books that literally you're reading through the text and that this has nothing to do with anything in this room, and we didn't utilize that information to escape the room.
Yeah, I think this is and maybe it gets a pass because it's an escape room, or maybe it's even more important. Yeah, I don't really know how to
Okay.
take it right
Yeah.
now just from playing it, but I think, God, what is it in the commercial? I think this is gonna be the second time I've quoted him, so I'm just a fucking hack. But there's like a commercial for like Will Wright's masterclass, the dude that made The Sims, and he says like when you're making a games, you work with two computers, the one that the game runs on and the one inside the player's head. And I think for me, like when you're talking about like an escape room, like that's something important to take into account, right? And this is especially God, I'm like jumping from fucking metaphor to metaphor, but like I played Mario Maker and I made a lot of levels in Mario Maker, and it turns out it's really easy. And I'm not like blaming the dev for doing this, but I'm sort of expanding it into a large
Yeah.
point, and then we could bring it back into the mad experiment. But like when I played Mario Maker, and I would make a level, it was really easy to be like, oh, well, here's what you do. You jump from here to here to here, jump on this block, get this item, throw it at the swamp, whatever. When I'd hand my Switch to another person, and be like, play my level, I'd be like, I have no fucking idea what I have to do. Because when you make the game and you know the process, it's really easy to be like, well, I know the steps to take. So when you make like an experiment or an escape room, like the Mad Experiment game, you might be like, oh, well, here's like the flowchart. You find the the sheet that has the water droplet, and you see that there's a safe that has a water droplet. You figure out that it spells, H2O. You get the water, you put the fireplace out, whatever. But let's say in that situation, like you have all these books that end up not being relevant. Well, you're on a timer. You have 60 minutes.
Yeah.
You need a bunch of information. You have a bunch of codes. So you're picking it up. You're picking up the books, and you're like, are the dates important? Is there something about the first letter of each word? Maybe like the names of the books. Do we have to alphabetize them? Do we have to
And in
put
some
them somewhere
cases,
specific?
that was the answer. Something of what you just mentioned, the past four things, like one of those actually was the answer.
Sure.
Like,
There was a sheet of paper where you had to take every word was randomly capitalized. Or there were some words randomly capitalized. So you took every letter and it was an anagram for water, which is how you figure out that it's H2O.
Yeah.
For like one of the codes. But then that enforces your logic, where you're like, I already needed to use a sheet of paper to figure out something. Like clearly these other books are going to be relevant somehow.
Yeah.
And again, I think some element of that is okay, but there might be a point where it's too much.
Yes.
Because it leads players totally into a rabbit hole that's completely irrelevant.
Mhm.
And it's tough finding that balance of giving people enough information and information in the right way where they can use it the way they need to use it, but then not flood them with so many red herrings or so many random things that don't matter. That
I think it makes what you're describing is the player's frustrated experience, and you get frustrated if you're handed a set of rules and you as a player try to follow the rules and play within the rules of the game, but then you're punished for going. So I'm trying to pay attention to all the information you're giving me. If you're going to give me bad information that's not helpful to get to my end goal, it creates a frustrating experience.
Yeah.
I don't like frustrating experiences. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I'm not going to come back to that game. But you can cut through frustrating experiences by having other factors step in. So cool music, cool artwork, interesting game design. The puzzle was so interesting that I didn't mind the red herrings. So like if you want to analyze a movie and see and point out all the bad things they did and all the goofs and all the mess ups and all the maybe minor plot holes, you can like tear apart a movie and say that's bad. But there's movies that do that are really good movies because they've done other things, and it generates the emotion of and we've spoken about this before too. A video game doesn't have to create the motion fun always. Like sometimes a video game, frustrating experiences can be good if it's frustrating and then satisfying once you actually beat it, like a roguelike.
Right.
Like super frustrating because you're so weak, and then you build up your skills, and because you're building up your skills, you get more rewarded, which means you get better, which means you get better gear, which means your next run's easier. make like the Mad Experiments escape room was an enjoyable 81-minute experience for three people that were all trying to figure out together on a stream.
Hmm.
Good interaction from the chat. Uh, and you kind of hosted it, and we were happy to join. And thank you for the invite and all that.
Yeah.
But um, how could we, if we could give feedback, like, let's say the game dev was listening in right now, what would make that experience better? And I'll sort of, like, as you're thinking about that, I say an interest, like the artwork. I didn't get. We were kind of floating masks, and we woke up in this room. I don't. They had a mirror that showed you what kind of mask you were, and
Hmm.
you could alter that, so that's your player identity. I don't know what a floating mask sort of means. Um, so maybe some sort of like intro, and you can make this very broad. But like you wake up in the middle of um, a room, you're not sure how you got there, you're not sure how your friends are there. Why am I here? And what am I trying to get to? And it could be very like, it could be one line of text. It could be like people have done this in the past. And then if you had ambient music, and I didn't pay attention to the music might have been good or bad. I don't remember, but that kind of is an indication right off the bat that it wasn't memorable. Um, and then to your point, sometimes the red herrings weren't good, but if you made the red herrings unlock other things down the line, they would cease to be red herrings. But I think that's sort of would lessen our frustration. So those are
Yeah.
sort of my feedback on that. So do you have any comments or?
I think so kind of to go back to what I was talking about with those like those rabbit holes that you can fall into.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that Mad Experiments has that kind of cushions its the faults or the dangers of having that kind of thing is the fact that it's multiplayer. Because
Yeah.
I think usually the thing that can end up being the most frustrating is when it's a single person using their own thought process to solve a puzzle. So having multiple people look at different, items in the room and try to figure out, well, what is necessary, what's not. Like, you don't have to put all the work in. And if you're wrong, if at least one person is going down the right path, then that can often help too. Um, and then to that same point, like, it might not feel as sort of in depth as some other single player rooms, but that's because you're not putting in 100% of the work, right? If you have three people, you're each putting in 30% of the total puzzle solving or the total computation to figure out what the fuck is going on. So I think those things, it's easy to be like, or it would be easy for me to be like, make it bigger, just make a bigger room, make more puzzles. But then you get into an issue where it's like, well, if it's more complicated, or if there's more stuff, then we have to. It, in theory, would take more time. It takes more time. The timer has to be longer, and then how long is too long for like a multiplayer experience?
Yeah.
That's gonna
It's
be
hard. Yeah.
presumably one sitting. Yeah. So I kind of get what you're saying as far as the atmosphere, the environments and stuff like that. I think at least for right now, with only one room and knowing there's a second room coming, and when we beat the room, there's kind of a hint at something. There's a photograph with a message, see you on the other side. So there might be more to it than that. Obviously for me, I kind of get, not necessarily firsthand, but I get where making certain trying to think of how to phrase this. Cutting certain things out or making compromises for like what you have can like help the process, especially if you're an independent designer, right? So it's like it probably would be better to have full bodies, but how much easier is it to just design a camera with a mask on it, right? And not to say that it's like easier is better.
Yeah, but then it's
when
like,
you're a single,
why? Like it's just little things like I'm sort of interested because you can make a floating mask into like an interesting thing. Like I'm just thinking about this from like a
sure, you can
yeah,
put like lore into it or something like that.
yeah.
I mean, like a game I think about a lot for, and this is speculation. I haven't talked to them, so I don't know. But there's a game called Return of the Obra Dinn, which I know I've talked to you about, but I don't think I've talked about it on the podcast. And it's a detective game by Lucas Pope, which is the same guy that did Papers, Please.
Okay. Yep.
And it's a detective game where you're on a ship and you have to find the the fates and the identities of the 60 people that died on a ship called the Oberdin, and you have like a magic stopwatch that can show you the moment that someone died when you're on the corpse.
Yeah.
And you have to go through your whole notebook and write down, this face is this name, died this way, and you have to figure it out for everybody. And that game is fantastic in its own right. But one of the things that I think is like, it's a little sneaky, and it's one of these like, you might not notice like anything about it because it works so well for what the concept of the game is. But when you go into someone's memory, it's like a still shot. You can look around, and you get all the information you need out of that, and it's obviously very, very valuable. But that means you don't have to animate any of it.
Yeah.
So much of the game, maybe 95% of the game, has no animation whatsoever.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is block it and throw it up. And for a person making a game by themselves, like, that much more space to work on other things can be really helpful.
Yeah.
But I do get what you're saying, where it's like, even if you're gonna make that sort of cut where you're like, it might give me more time, and I'm not even saying this is why it's done. Right? Maybe it's not. Maybe it just likes the other style better, whatever it may be. But just a little bit of why, a little bit of lore, like, why are we just disembodied masks or whatever?
So a really popular game that did this really well recently is Disco Elysium.
I haven't played that one.
Yeah, but you've heard about it, right?
Oh, I've heard about it.
So, yeah.
Have I heard about it?
That took the RPG mystery click adventure, not a whole lot of animation, like, it just made so many interesting things about that style of game, and it turned it on its head. And it's unlike an RPG experience that I've ever had before. And it was so interesting that, like, from the start of that game, in the first 2 minutes, the choices they have you make are so, like, you are forged from some mysterious, like, universal or universe being forged out of existence and shot into, like, a Big Bang moment, like, where the hell is this coming from, into, like, this hazy, like, hotel room, and you wake up and your face is all blurred, you don't know what you look like, you're not sure how you are, you're not sure where you are, you're not sure what you're doing, you have amnesia, and you're clicking through stuff, and you can't trust the narrator. You are the narrator, you can't trust yourself, and you have to develop your skills, and the skill set that the RPG tree, or the skill elements are, it's not charisma, strength, willpower, it's like Inland Empire, like, and which is a reference to a David Lynch film, I believe. So David Lynch, like, my connection to that is he's such a weird filmmaker who's made all these, like, are they reality? Is it semi-reality? Unreliable narrator. If anyone's seen Twin Peaks, which is a TV show from the 90s that's very mysterious, and they had a recently updated movie, like, in 2008 or something like that. Or let's see, there's just the skills that have been provided to you in that game provide such an interesting backstory that's rides on the back of the mystery. So if you give players just enough to be curious about it, and don't show them much else, and then let them progress and find out, and what they find out is so interesting, that's how you write a good story, and a compelling story. And escape rooms can utilize all that. And I don't know if that ties in with the game, the what was it called, the one where you have to, the one we were just talking about?
The Room?
No, the bridge to the one that you just described, is the Papers, Please.
The Return of the Oberdin?
Yeah. It sounds like there's something, almost some sort of connection with Disco Elysium, with that style of, you're given a certain amount of information, and you have to work from that. And it's not a super complicated game. It's not a AAA title or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, Return of the Oberdin is kind of like, for me, it's literally like there's the fucking super pretentious shit, but it's literally like a modern classic of a puzzle game. It is
Yeah.
absolutely amazing how that game forces you to think and forces you to use I don't know if this is like a real term, but I'll say it anyway, like non-diegetic logic. Like
Okay.
you use information outside of what the game is giving you
Yes.
to figure out the puzzles, and sometimes that includes just like process of elimination. Like the game literally tells you straight up there will be things where you can only solve them by figuring out everything around it. And so already you're like, well, I can't just look for the answer to stuff, I have to use critical thinking at
Yes.
all times. And that game sort of has its own interesting ways of doing that kind of stuff, uh but for sure, like, you know, I man, I don't know. I think it's difficult because like I hear what you're saying about Disco Elysium, and for sure in Return of the Obra Dinn there's a certain level of that too, where it's just kind of like building kind of like an atmosphere, even if there's not a ton. I'm pretty sure Disco Elysium there probably is, but in Return of the Obra Dinn they don't really satisfy on like what your purpose is or why you have a magic stopwatch. They don't really tell you, it's difficult.
Then
Because,
what makes
like,
you
even,
finish the game or play it longer than the first couple minutes?
see, I think maybe man, that's a tough question, because I think it depends on the game. There are some games where I am motivated by like the in-game sort of success. Like I want to see the end of the story, I want to know more about the lore, I want to see the characters succeed. And then there's games where they're basically like proxies or avatars for my own success.
Okay.
Like when I play Return of the Obra Dinn, I'm like, I just want to see, I just want to play the game because it challenges me at some level. You know, like even going back to the room, I'm like, the room 1 doesn't, like, you know, it has some interesting, you know, sounds and visuals, but what drove me was just kind of the logic of the game.
Okay.
Especially going into the Mad Experiments escape room, I think because it's multiplayer and because you're talking with other people the entire
Yeah.
time, I think it fulfills that sort of experience where it's like we don't even necessarily need to give you a character you play as, because if you're a mask, you're just you in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We typed our own names in. Like you had Steven like right on top, and I had like my name, and we're
Right.
yeah.
So for me, like, you know, and I think different people have sort of different motivations for why they want to complete games, but I find myself sort of those two routes. Sometimes it's something within the game that I want to get done, and sometimes it's stuff sort of externally from the game where I'm like, I just want to be good at this, or I just want to mess around with this, and I don't really need like story. And I think unfortunately it's, you know, kind of a cop out, but I think it's like case dependent. Like there are games where I'll be like, the story was bad, and that's just it. But for me, like, if the story's bad, it stands out if the game is trying to be narratively interesting.
I understand that there are multiple incentives why different people want to play through different games, but I'm trying to narrow this down to specifically escape room like games and
Sure.
indie games. So like, and that's where the character or the game design comes in. It's that how do you design a game that's what prevents people from minimizing your game when they get stuck, going to the wiki, looking up how to get to the past the next step, and cheating, like in a way.
Right.
And like we play lots of other indie games where that type of play is actually encouraged. So recently I've been playing Terraria. The To make Terraria a better experience, you minimize it when you get stuck, go to the wiki, look up how to do the next step of what you're trying to do, then go into game and execute on that. Like, oh, holy shit. And that it brings you to 14 other things that are cooler that you didn't even know that you could wiki defeating that boss or that crazy thing. So why don't people do that for escape rooms? What causes them to want to stay in? One thing broadly is having a timer. Like I don't have enough time to minimize, look up what I'm trying to do, see the next step. And then part of it is players have sort of made a contract, an agreement sometimes. I'm not going to cheat on this. Most players going like you bought the room and the room 2 and you wanted to play through them. You don't want them explained to you or spoiled by your chat or anything like that. Like
Right.
you want to figure out the puzzle. And what is it that makes people who want to figure out puzzles keep on, like, you just get stuck and then you're like, well, screw this game, I'm going to the next game. Like, no, you stuck with it longer than you would have otherwise, despite the frustration. And I'm trying to figure out what that is and what drives it. And if you could tap into what past games that have done that really well. So, for example, the Flash game, Escape the Room from 2004 or 5 or whatever, that stuck with me. Like, here we are 15 years later. I'm still like thinking about it, thinking like if they could take what was good about that and apply it, if it still works, that would be a good thing. Like, what do you do with that? And I think that's kind of my broad question to the game designers that you and me can look in and we actually want to talk about that and like think about it. Like, so that's where my questioning mind goes.
Yeah, I think one of the jobs I think of being a game designer, which I feel obviously very confident talking about not being a game designer, is that you want to what's the best way to phrase it? You want to make the game and program the player at the same time.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
you want to have the game force people, or at least attempt to change the way people think or interact with your game.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of great examples of how designers do this all over. One of the most recent ones that gets, jotted up all the time is 2016's Doom game.
Yeah.
Where, a lot of modern day shooters are sort of cover based.
It's one of my favorite gaming experiences in the past 5 years.
Doom, the new Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it first of all, it's just a great game.
Yeah.
But, a lot of these, like, more modern games are about, like, hiding behind cover and being careful. And so, purposefully, to prevent players from playing passively, Doom incentivizes players to go up and kill enemies with, like, the finishing, whatever it's called, the glory kill or whatever.
Yes.
Because it gives them ammo and health back. And so, not only do they, the players know they get something for doing that, but you're also making them play a specific way, because all of a sudden playing passively is worse.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some kind of benefit to do these other things. So there is some kind of something that you have to do within that game that's like, how can I lead the players exactly where they need to be and prevent them from doing stuff that's like suboptimal.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because if a player has access to that and they reach the point where that becomes the best option, they'll usually do it. Whether that's like cheating an item into a game if they can't get it the way they want to, whether that's
looking up the security code, like
looking up what you have to do if you can't figure it out. So it's like you need to make it, and again, like we basically this whole time, it's a difficult balance of like, how can we give you enough information to where you can solve the puzzle, but not so much information that it's not actually a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff can be difficult. And usually hints are a pretty good way. Mad Experiments does have hints.
You can pause the game, you can press escape, look up a hint,
mm-hmm.
and what did you think about that whole thing? Because I was like surprised that they included that. And is that a regular? Have you noticed that in the room?
Yeah, the room has hints, and I've used the hints in the room as well.
I don't know what to think about that.
A majority of the time when I've popped the hints in the room, it's something that I already knew, but I thought I had either
it confirmed
already completed or something. So like, let's say like yesterday I had a whole fucking debacle because I was supposed to spell out the word infinity into a typewriter.
Did you just spell it wrong?
Because I saw the word infinity somewhere else.
So you tried it, and in your mind you were like, okay, that part is done. That does not work.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I checked the hint, and it's like, maybe there's something around here that gives you the code. I'm like, well, infinity, and then I look at chat, and everyone's like, you spelled it wrong. And then I spelled it wrong a second time. I don't know how many I's are in the word infinity, apparently. But
yeah.
we got there eventually.
That points to such a complicated issue of like when you're doing detective work or like whatever that is in your life. What if you've already had the right solution and you passed by because you didn't get the result even though you were on the right track? And how do you measure? There's like, I'm trying to grow this YouTube channel and I don't have any views, but like how do you know if it's good content or not if you don't have views to point you in the right direction? Or like,
yeah,
there's no feedback mechanism. That's so in that way you actually just like immediately like changed my mind right now. I'm thinking that you shouldn't be able to press escape and like look up a hint, but to your point, that was actually an enhancement to the game, would you say? Like,
yeah, because even if you are giving the players information that they might not necessarily need, you should at least try to count on two things. The first one's kind of a soft one. You should count on the player only using it if they need it. This is not actually true. Because a lot of people, what do we do when we play like, oh, I'm fighting this boss in Elder Scrolls on hard. Oh fuck, this boss is actually really
You
difficult.
find the corner to put them in so that you can hit them.
Easy, or you literally go into the menu and you're like, easy, kill the boss, back to hard.
Yeah.
Anyways, we pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And, easy is supposed to be for people that never play fucking games,
Yeah.
or have some kind of maybe physical disability and they can't play games.
Yeah.
The same way that whatever. But people will take the easy way out.
Yes.
Like that's just the mentality
You
of
must
gamers.
you must design for it, that your players will try to
Right,
find
right.
the cut throughs to make their experience easy as possible and get the maximum.
Exactly. And that's where you kind of have to get into the mentality of like, if we know players are going to take a specific route to do this thing, and we don't want to just completely shut off options to the point where they either turn off our game or just close it and look something up,
Mhm.
then we have to play into what are they going to do. So if you're frustrated in a game, the most likely thing you're going to do is go onto the internet. If we're talking about escape rooms, you're
Yeah.
going to go onto the internet and you're going to look for what you do to solve this puzzle.
Mhm.
You don't know what kind of information they're going to get. You don't know if they're going to get too much, if they're going to get the solution to the entire game. So you need to intervene and be like, we'll give you information, but
We'll do it our way. Yeah.
right, we'll vet it to make sure it's just a little bit enough. And then if it's past that point, it's kind of too much, right?
Yeah. Okay,
There's
so it's
really
not
much to do there.
it's not a bad thing. It's actually an enhancement to the experience to give you a little something to
Right.
you are on the right track. Here you go. Without breaking the immersion, because I don't want it, that's the worst thing, right? Like I don't want it to feel like, cuz then all right, I was playing Terraria. They have a newest update and it's journey mode.
Mhm.
And so journey mode, we didn't know, cuz I'm not like a big Terraria player. I've put in 20 hours into the game and most of them were prior to the update. So we load into this new mode and you have armor, you have equipment, you have a super jump, and you've got a bird on your head that fights for you without you having to do anything. So it's basically just easier than easy mode. It's God mode. It is, you can control the time of day, the time of passing, so you can make days go by faster to have certain spawns occur. You can make it nighttime in a second so that you can farm up monsters. And I was playing with a couple of my friends, and we were all like, I mean, this is cool how powerful you are for an hour. And then it's like, well, this is kind of boring. Let's go back to like hard mode. And I think there's a place for it. What's up?
It just cut out for a second.
Okay. All right. We're good. So, God mode is fun and there's a place for it, but you don't want that to be the experience all the way through. So there's this balance that you have to achieve. And with escape rooms, you want them to not get frustrated and throw up the controller, the keyboard and mouse, and be like, all right, I'm done. Like, so giving them the hints is actually a good thing. So yeah, we've actually had a better experience trying to do expert mode on Terraria as three of us, and like we are dying a ton, but we find it a more enjoyable experience. And we're not like hardcore like into the game. We're figuring it out with the help of the wiki, and it's just us and our mechanics against the really difficult game. But we're also three of us. 3 heads are better than one, and you can mine 3 times as much, and it enhances the experience overall. So yeah.
Yeah, and those hints are in some ways kind of like an accessibility feature. Some people might just not
Exactly.
Maybe you don't
They're
speak
optional.
English perfectly. Maybe you just don't have the same level of critical thinking. Maybe you're playing the game by yourself, and giving people the ability to at least lean into the designers, or having faith in the designer to give you a little bit of a hint rather than just go and spoil the game completely. I think that's probably a beneficial thing.
Cool.
Especially within the parameters of the game. I think that's
All right. Any other thoughts on escape rooms? That was a good discussion and
now.
analysis. Yeah. All right. Cool.
all in all, I think I found the mad experiments actually pretty enjoyable.
It was a good.
I think it was a good time.
I'm happy that the game dev gave you was nice enough, generous enough. I know they're looking for exposure, but I mean, you made a whole episode of AK Indie Gaming around your game, so I mean that's a positive. I hope that we could send this to the game dev. Maybe you could. I think it'd be cool if you sent like a clip of this back to them and just say, like, we liked your game. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I loved it. Like, it's the best game ever. And like, I wouldn't recommend it to like every single person that I like with games. And yeah, that's my honest opinion.
Kind of experience. Yeah. It's you know, if you're a fan of that kind of thing, I think there's people that look for different kind of experiences within gaming.
Oh, for sure.
This is very much like a you know, we are putting kind of like a real life escape room type situation into a game, and because it's multiplayer, you have that aspect, that social
that was
aspect
a huge
of solving
part.
problems with other people.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty fun.
That was a lot of fun.
If you're gonna play it by yourself, it's I'm not even gonna say it's a bad game, but it's definitely gonna be different. I think this game's strong suit is that multiplayer aspect. I think that's definitely a big selling point to it.
The way to do it, how we described it, is the way I would do it.
Yeah.
Moving forward for anybody. Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's good. I just like escape rooms. Apparently.
And you didn't even know that before, like last week. You just happened to have this like weird interaction, and now you're like down this path of purchasing more games. And
I'm sure after the room 3, it's gonna be like the Messenger, and then probably after the Messenger, it's gonna be like Mist or some shit, and then after Mist, it's gonna be some other thing.
So you get tired of it and you find the next thing. Yeah.
Yep. Until Diablo 4 comes out.
Very quickly, I'll mention that I have been playing The Long Dark, which is a survival, very atmospheric, narrative-driven, again, mysterious, eerie. It's a game where it's just about you versus imagine you versus the cold. So every time you exit a building, you're in the northern woods of Canada, and your plane has crashed and you have to survive. And you're constantly you against the clock, you against hunger, you against thirst, you against the cold, and you have to find resources. And at no point are you ever safe. Like, okay, I feel established, I am good to go. No, every experience is a journey traveling from in the blizzard, from this house to the gas station. Am I geared up? Am I good to go? And I've got to find an item so that I can progress the story. And I know you have a lot of experience with other games like that, so maybe another episode we could touch on survival type of. I don't know what you would. You're better at it.
Survival games.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely a huge between Rust, Ark. The Long Dark is definitely more of like a narrative based one. I mean, Don't Starve, which I guess technically is a. I mean, not technically, it just is a survival game, just of a very different art style. But
maybe that'll be
there's a lot to that.
A sneak peek for another episode, because I feel like we got to give that like an hour to talk about, because I've got like more to say.
Yeah. Survival games, definitely. There's a lot of them out there, and as of late, maybe not as of late, but as of the past 5 years or something, there's definitely been a big influx of those kind of hardcore survival games. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and particularly The Long Dark, I would recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It is a little clunky, so if you get easily frustrated by this doesn't work exactly how I want it to, or when I'm walking, why can't I move that past this issue? There's nothing blocking me, and you look down, there's like one single block. It's like, okay, I got to go around that thing, and little stuff like that. But if you're playing indie games, like none of us mind that terribly. Like,
if you're playing any game, honestly, I mean,
really, yeah,
Jesus fuck, you can't even play. There's no AAA games you play either that don't have their fair share of jank. I mean, we don't have to look at what was it, Assassin's Creed Unity,
to find all the glitches.
Came out and you'd open a cutscene and a person's face didn't render, but they were just floating eyeballs in a mouth. Like,
yeah. All right, Steven, that was a good time, and we should do a shout out for your stream and your YouTube and everything that you're working on.
Yeah, I make YouTube videos where I put up stream highlights and review indie video games at youtube.com/StephanGalaxy, and I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and occasionally on the weekend, twitch.tv/StephanGalaxy, indie variety, and just chatting.
And his stream experience is awesome just to have on. I would recommend, I mean, if you're watching us at all, go check him out, because you're just, I've said this every episode and I mean it, you're just entertaining, you're a good streamer. You don't have nearly the awareness on you that you will eventually have. Like you get consistent viewers that show up, and you've got subs and stuff, but it'll grow because you're good at what you're doing. So I would recommend it. Yeah, I mean, you're awesome at streaming. So My channel is Michael Coolman. I try to make it very easy to just Google search my name and all my stuff pops up. We're on Spotify. We're on not this show, although maybe in the future we'll see. Spotify and iTunes for more content from me. I do a movies podcast with my friend Corey, and I do Magic the Gathering limited format, so drafting to win. So anybody who wants to check that out, I've got tons of videos that they need some views, they need some direction. Tell me what you hate, tell me what you like. It's been a fun project working on that. So, all right, off to play more indie games, and we'll check back with everyone next week.
You.